There we go. Okay, so this is the March 13th, 2024 meeting of the Lunenburg Open Space Committee. Mike Toohill, chair. We have Anna Lockwood, member, Matt Allison, member, and Eric Hines, member with us. So we have a quorum this evening. This meeting is being held remotely via Zoom in compliance with Governor Healy's extension of the Open Meeting Act provisions allowing remote meetings. It'll also be on Lunenburg Live channel and will be on the Lunenburg YouTube channel as a recording, supposedly within 24 hours of the meeting. Sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't. So thank you very much all for coming. Going to see if I can't find my agenda. I knew I was going to do this. There we go. All right, so I've called the meeting to order. First order of business is to review and approve the minutes from the February 28th meeting. I did distribute those. Hopefully folks have had a chance to take a look at those.
I did.
Okay.
Anyone
I did
else?
as well.
Okay.
I wasn't at the meeting, but I did review the minutes.
Any changes need to be made?
Not that I read. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the February 28th meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Since Brandon is missing, Eric, you've done a great job before. Would you mind taking notes for us, minutes for us?
Not at all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We're missing our clerk this evening, our secretary. Okay, so I'll do a roll call. Matthew Allison.
Aye.
Anna Lockwood.
Aye.
Eric Hines.
Just to be clear, we're taking a roll call on approving the minutes.
The first and second for approving the February 28th minutes.
Aye.
Thank you. And the chair votes aye as well. So that has passed unanimously. So the minutes are approved. I will get those over to the town clerk's office. Second order of discussion is Board of Selectmen meeting. They had a meeting on the 5th, which I was not able to attend. I did watch the meeting. And just to everybody else that's on the call probably knows this already, but the board voted to take no action on either the Parmenter Road or the Stump Cove parcel recommendation from Open Space Committee. So, and more importantly, or also, I guess, the chair of the select board originally was saying maybe they would put a piece on town warrant about the Stump Cove parcel just as a placeholder, and other members of the select board did not agree with that. So when they voted to not put the transfer of the care and control to the parks of that parcel over on town warrant. So those issues have been essentially tabled indefinitely now.
Well, may I speak, Chair?
You sure? Sure.
Okay. So, part of the motivation for the select board to not go was that an offer from Shady Point on offering free access to town residents for non-motorized boats. And the person from Chris from Shady Point, he came to the Parks Commission meeting, which was the week before, and he extended that offer. He also had mentioned that since he had reached out to the select board, no one had followed up with him. And the Parks Commission, it is in the charter, the Parks Commission is established by charter, not by a bylaw, that we can lay out parks and we can run programs outside park, town property owned. So basically the Parks Commission can enter into an agreement with Shady Point. And the reason I say that is, if you were to watch the Parks Commission meeting, fellow Parks Commissioners, they were happy with the offer. because in truth now we are in the thick of working with Marshall Park. Any development of that land wouldn't be happening immediately. So the Parks Commission felt that that offer is a good offer at the moment. Immediately offers access to a meaningful access to the lake for no motorized boats. It does not accomplish everything, we have dreamed of, but it does accomplish something now.
Mhm.
And what is important to that I want to really say here is, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of confidence on the select board as stewards of public wealth. We see what has happened in town buildings. We've seen that, these parcels have been under their care and control, and they haven't even gone through the process of clearing title. I also don't have confidence that they have, the time of the day or the drive to really be focused on open space and recreation for all town residents. And I say that because what we talked about at the Parks Commission was, if the select board does not follow up with Shady Point to execute this contract, which Shady Point generally is offered to do it within, they were talking about maybe doing a 10-year contract, which it seems good. If the select board does not follow up with them, the Parks Commission will. And I will say too that in terms of tabling this permanently, the select board doesn't make any decisions. They can make recommendations to town meeting. At the end of the day, anyone can bring this to town meeting and bring this to a vote to town meeting. It takes 10 signatures. The Parks Commissions have no desire to do this right now if the Shady Point contract goes through. But I would not say that this has been tabled indefinitely. The Parks Commission is fully, invested on offering meaningful access to Lake Shirley through one of the town-owned parcels.
Yeah, what I meant, Anna, was the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board has essentially tabled this. I don't mean, community-wide. I meant the Select Board, their decision was not to make a decision.
Right. Yeah, but I am going to hold the Select Board accountable to bring this to fruition, and if they don't, we will. And I, the select board is good to work with them, but if they're going to be dragging their feet and not really wanting to take any action, other people in town will. So that's, sorry for the lengthy explanation, but we
No,
had to
that's
go through a
okay.
few things.
And the obvious point is that these two parcels remain as public open space land. It's just under they're held as general municipal, which is under the care and control of the select board, but they're still open to Lunenburg residents.
Yeah, I mean, what's unfortunate within some of the discussions there were, it's not accessible to everyone. It's, there's so much more we can do for town residents. It's not where it needs to be, but the Parks Commission has a big project in hand now. I think the Shady Point is a great offer, and I think you should execute it. But I am not confident that select board will prioritize that, because they always have, I don't know. I don't want to say they're bored of do nothing, but my book, it feels pretty close to it.
Keep pushing them, Anna.
Oh. Thanks.
Okay.
All
Any of
right.
the other committee members want to weigh in on this? That's all really I had about the select board decision on the 5th, or lack of decision on the 5th.
Yeah, I'll mention, I think that it's a good opportunity to take that 10-year contract with Shady Point, and that would give us 10 years to come up with a development plan, so to speak, for Stump Cove for some meaningful access.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really great thing that they're doing for the citizens of this town. It's a great access point. It'll be controlled. There are amenities there that we wouldn't have at either of the other sites, so I think it works out well for everyone. But like Anna said, we've got to push it past the goal line, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, I think that's it for that point of discussion. Let's move on to the next point. And I know there's a bunch of people from the public. We do have public input session later on. You can certainly revisit this or any other item later on, but I'd like to just move through the committee's agenda quickly if we could. So the next discussion point is the 100 Howard Street right of first refusal. And Matthew let me know that there actually was not a planning board meeting this week. There were some issues with the Zoom. So the planning board did not discuss it. You have another meeting on the 23rd, is that correct?
No, the 25th, it's the caucus night.
25th, okay.
Yep.
Okay. I know that conservation did discuss the parcel and they're not recommending that the town exercise right of first refusal.
Yep.
I didn't know whether, this committee wanted to discuss this as well. I did have some email conversations with Brandon Kibbe, who's unfortunately not with us tonight. In advance of the planning board meeting, he was not going to be able to make the meeting. So Mary and I actually had some just quick email conversations. I had email conversations with Brandon about it. And he had some good points. He has some questions for the planning board, Matthew, about what the process is when a parcel comes in. Is there a checklist process to clear things to make sure that, it's not in 61 or isn't 61, or there's probably a whole bunch of other items. I know other planning boards have that when they get an application in, there's a functory checklist to go through. We didn't know whether or not your board had such a thing.
Yeah, I think we do. And in fact, I myself was under the impression this was February of this year, but it wasn't. It was February of last year. So we're over a year that this A&R was submitted and approved. I will say that the A&R submission ties the planning board's hands. There's almost realistically 0.5% of a possibility that we could deny endorsing an A&R. But it did. It's my bad. I didn't catch it, and I should have. I'm not entirely clear on the process. It seems that town council has weighed in, and our time clock started March. What was it? March 3rd, the first week of March. So as far as the legalities of the first right of refusal process are 3 months, I think, right? 120 days.
Yeah, 120 days.
Started at the first week of March.
Brandon had a question as to whether or not, because he sent me some sections from chapter 61 itself, whether or not town council's read on that is correct. But far be it for me to question town council.
Right, me neither. However, that's the understanding. We don't have the land use director now. We did have him last February. We don't have him this February.
Yeah.
So we don't have any staff. We have one temporary person for 12 hours a week. So there's really very little communication to the board members outside of the meetings.
Okay.
We're in a tough spot.
I mean, I'd still be interested in having open space members attend your next meeting, if not to discuss this specific parcel, but just to discuss process. So that we can jointly come up with, because we're appointed by the planning board, so that we can jointly come up with a process that works in a timely fashion.
Yes, agreed. Hopefully our temporary land use director, Richard, will be with us at our next meeting.
Okay.
That would be excellent. I suppose we could try to organize having the town council there at the meeting. If there was, I guess, this is open for discussion for this group right now about this parcel, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, I don't know. I know for a fact that right now there is probably very, very, very little appetite for spending any money on anything outside of what we already know we owe. Because of, we're looking at a possible override this year.
Right.
So I think the price tag on this is 300,000. I don't think the town wants to cop that up. There are other options. But I guess we should consider the reality of the acquisition, even if we say this is the perfect piece of property, we should conserve this. We need $300,000. I guess there's the reality of that to look at in my mind. I think it's a nice piece. It in my mind, it meets at least 2 out of the 6. And there's a possibility of, it's a good spot. It's a small acreage for a good amount of money. But I mean, there's all kinds of other things to have discussion about, but I mean, basically, the end of the day, it all depends on if the town wants to vote to spend the money to purchase the property. And I certainly, I don't agree that it would be nice if we had the CPA, Community Preservation Act. I think that would help allow us to help on these properties, but we don't. And it seems like, I'll go ahead and jump on Anna's bandwagon and I'll complain about the management of the town for the last few decades, I think, couple decades. But, that's, I'm just throwing some reality into the situation. I like the parcel. I think it has some possibility. There's an adjacent vacant parcel that would allow access to what we currently own, which is 204 parcels, 243 plus acres that's landlocked. I think we access that through Townsend.
Matt, actually, I think I was listening to, I don't know if it was open, conservation or maybe the planning board, meeting, where someone said that although they're selling just these 3 pieces, I think it's 3 parcels, right? And only looks to be a small piece that's going out of chapter. The reality is you have to take the whole parcel out and then put the remainder back. So even though they are, only selling a small part of it, the reality is they are taking the entire parcel out of chapter. And our first right of refusal is to the entirety of the property.
Okay, I appreciate that input, and I'd like to think that was true. My understanding, however, is that that's not true. That if you've got a large parcel, that you can take smaller pieces out of chapter. And I know we've already done that recently for the 255 Sunny Hill Road.
Okay.
They went through 3 different iterations of taking piece after piece after piece out of that large parcel out so that they could develop plans.
Right, so they could bypass everything, yeah. Okay, in one of them, is that something that we have received, a town council, information, or is this casual knowledge, anecdotal knowledge, like someone told you that, or is this has been verified with town council?
My understanding and recollection is that I've been included on an email thread that had town council's response and said that it was a qualified offer. And I think as far as the first right of refusal, I think that's what matters. And town council, my understanding, again, has weighed in and said it is qualified, and that our time clock started the first few days of March. So.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I mean, some of these bylaws, the way there have, I mean, I think it was a member of the planning board who, Tim, who said, we're dealing with capitalism. This is capitalism. So we make these bylaws that with all the best intention in the world. And then people wanting to make money, which is within their right, they find ways to go around the system that we try to put. And of course, town governments are very slow to respond. So, you know, because like you said, we're not interested in a small piece, but if it was a whole lot, we would more likely be.
Yeah. I think we'd be jumping all over it if it was the whole lot.
It is what it is.
Yeah, and that was kind of Brandon's take, was that the parcels, the A&R parcels up front weren't as interesting as the back parcel, the bigger part of this parcel, and that is hopefully going to stay in chapter.
Well, I would assume it's going to, because only a couple of years ago, he planted a bunch of Christmas trees there, so.
Okay. All right, I don't know that, or unless you guys want to, does open space have a recommendation, or do we want to wait until we meet with planning prior to the drop dead date that the town council has given us? I mean, conservation took the stand that they do not think that the town should be exercising right of first refusal. I didn't know if we were prepared at this point to say one way or the other how we felt about it.
I really wish Brandon was here.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a conversation with he and Mary before the planning board meeting that didn't happen. Can you say if they were positive or negative or kind of on the fence?
I didn't get a read from Mary, because we had separate conversations. But Brandon didn't think that exercising right of first refusal at this time was really what we should be recommending.
That's about what I figured. Yeah, I mean, going by the checklist that's in the open space plan,
Right.
there's two different groups of things: water quality protection, scenic landscape, ag protection. So it meets two out of those three. And you know, scenic landscape, that's one of those things that and then the second group category is important wildlife habitats, and it is that too. You know, you've got a cold water fishery, the Mulpus Brook goes right through the property. The entirety of it is in an ACEC. It's a Squanasset ACEC. So it's smaller than 50 acres, which is the first of the 6. So it's less than 50 acres. It is in the ACEC and it has a cold water fishery. So it meets the second criteria. The third criteria was public access recreation, and I believe it would meet that as well. The fourth criteria is scenic, maintain scenic and rural character. I think that a 20-acre stand of woods along a road rather than 3 or 4 houses would in fact do that, but again, that's arguable. Is it contiguous? It's not. It's not contiguous to anything aside from the road that's owned by the town. However, as I mentioned earlier, there is an adjacent vacant parcel that the Mulpus Brook runs right through and into our 4 parcels of 243 plus acres. So in that, it's not contiguous, but it could potentially provide considerable access. And then an ag viability, it's what did I do? It's prime 1 and local importance forest land is the majority of it, and there's minimal prime farmland soils. So just to be thorough on what we've already accomplished as our checklist, that's where it stands. I would say that it met 2, 3, and 6, and it certainly doesn't meet 1, and I think 4 and 5 are arguable. So I guess that's my homework.
And is 4 or 5 the contiguous parcel?
5 is a contiguous.
So the contiguous parcel that's privately held?
Oh, I'm sorry. So the fifth qualifier is contiguous and it's not, it doesn't touch any other parcels. But it does touch 228 Howard Street, which is a 41-acre vacant parcel. And
Privately held?
privately owned.
Okay,
So my thought on that is that there could be, I don't know if anybody knows the owner, there could be discussions with them. I didn't look into, I don't think it's in chapter. I think I would have noticed that, but we could look into the recreation, chapter. Allows for a landowner to retain ownership, get the tax break, and recreation, which is 61B, also provides for public access. So if we were to get this parcel that we're talking about and then make that arrangement with that neighbor, then that would also give us access to the 240 plus acres and 4 parcels that we have.
so you could have a trail through there.
My understanding, I'm not
Yeah, okay.
positive about that, but it does provide for public access, so I would assume one would lead to the other.
Okay,
But I think I've beaten that horse to death, and I just wanted to be thorough.
Anna or Eric, you have any thoughts on this?
You know, I think as a town, we need to be better prepared to act on some of these things. So not specific to this parcel, I think we just need to see if we can find a creative way to have an ability to act on these things, because even to putting a town meeting together, you know, I think that alone takes 60 days or more. Like the warrant is going to close on March 18. That's almost 60 days away from actual town meeting. So the time, is that a state law, 120 days, or is this a town requirement? Does anybody know?
I thought that was part of the requirements of the chapter itself.
So it's a state.
Yeah, state.
Yeah.
I thought that was when, you know, that was part and parcel with doing a 61.
Yeah. So I think, you know, in reality, for us to be able to act on any of these things, we need to find a way to be prepared for that. For example, I know the sewer commission, part of their budget is they have you know, I know the sewer commission operate in by their own means, but they have a capital fund that they can tap on as they need throughout the year. Because, you know, if a machine goes down, they can't wait for town meeting to a pump station.
Right.
So I don't know if there's something, if we can imagine something of that nature. And I don't know if there is any town that has done that. I know one advantage that in different towns, they have had a lot of different places, they will have a trust holding the land. So I know Lunenburg, everything is the Conservation Commission. And that's a way to operate outside the constraints of the town, and way to do fundraising and hold, you know, money, because that's our constraint. So I don't know, more for the future for us to see if we can imagine something.
Okay. So I'm going to paraphrase what I'm hearing, unless Eric has something else to add in. What I'm hearing is that this committee is not going to take any action tonight, and we hopefully be able to convene with the planning board at your next meeting with it, which I think is still prior to the 120-day expiration period.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
I think the select board said they wanted to hear by their April 8th meeting, didn't they?
Yes, it was the select board deadline. You're correct. So we can get together with planning prior to that, and then jointly make a recommendation to the select board.
That would be great. We're gonna have a public hearing for our warrant articles on that night.
So it'll be a long meeting.
Well, I would hope if you guys, okay, so there's the question. So since this has typically been a 7:30 meeting and planning board starts at 6, I don't know that open space members would be able to, with their jobs, their personal lives, whatnot, because it's an hour and a half earlier than we typically meet on Monday. But I would certainly be interested in have a joint meeting before we open our public hearing. So you don't have to sit through that, but,
Okay.
however we can make it work, I'd like to have that happen.
So what do you think? Could start a joint meeting like at 5 or something, or start at 6 with a joint meeting?
No, I was thinking that we could start at 6 with a joint meeting
Okay.
and schedule that before our public hearing.
All right. I'll send a feeler out to the other members of this committee and see if people can make that date and time and get back to the planning board.
Okay, be
Okay.
great.
I'll add to my calendar.
Okay, I think we will move on. Does planning or parks have any reports that they need to bring to this committee?
I'd like to share some good news, if I may.
Sure.
We were awarded the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant
Oh,
for the
good.
Marshall Park construction. So that's $1 million. And that puts us at $2.6 million of money raised that did not come from the coffers of the town of Lunenburg. I mean, it has come from taxes because these have all been
State taxes.
well, federal taxes. The land
Oh,
and water is
federal, okay.
actually, yeah, the land and water is actually funded by the National Park Service.
Okay.
So we are 2.6 and we are still working on grants and it's a lot of work, I'll tell you. I'm sure this group has applied for grants. So but it's a lot of work, but we are very determined to continue working on that. So
Well, congratulations. That's great news.
yeah, thank you. Aside from that, we have an RFQ out for an OPM for the first construction phase of Marshall. And that was due today, so we should have some news tomorrow. How many applicants we got, and the goal is still to break ground on the first phase with the ARPA money and the first grant that we got on July 1st.
Okay. Awesome.
That's our update.
What's the construction schedule like? What's your end date, do you think?
With the land and water, which is, it did encompass most of the other areas outside what it was on the first phase, is 2 years starting January 2025. So it'll probably be a 2.5 years construction project.
Okay. All right. Matthew, anything from planning, or did we already pretty much cover that?
Well, aside from the first right of refusal, I'm not quite sure. We have a lot of stuff going on, but I don't know that any of it would impact or be interesting. We do have 2 bylaws we're trying to put forth. One's for the battery storage, which is an important thing that we get through because we have an applicant and we don't have a bylaw. So it's important that we pass the bylaw. Well, it's important that we get the bylaw right, first of all. And then it's also important that we pass the bylaw, because if we don't pass the bylaw, then there's already somebody that we know that wants to build this thing that we're trying to make this bylaw to regulate. And if we don't make the bylaw, they're probably going to just build it without any great oversight. And the Water Supply Protection District is the other bylaw that we're working on. In my opinion, and I've not been shy about expressing it, I don't think we're ready to pass that at town meeting. It could, I don't know. The Water Supply Protection District, the water supply is a separate entity. It's the water district, but it's the town water supply for all the residents that have water. And the Water Supply Protection District bylaw is something that's being driven by the state, and it's coming through the water district and into planning board. So there's a bunch of players, and it's my personal opinion that we look at this as a town, as citizens of the town, and protect our drinking water as effectively as we can. There are some things in the existing bylaw we have that is just ridiculous, that we haven't been enforcing. and it makes no sense to enforce them. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense to just get rid of all the regulations, in my mind. So, just watershed, open areas, open space, just they kind of go together.
Mhm.
So that's about it, I guess. I don't think there's anything else.
So is the planning board discussion to see whether or not that's gonna go forward onto the warrant?
Well, we've already decided as a board to put it forth. We put it forth in the fall town meeting. And
Okay.
it didn't pass. And I don't, I think the only thing we've changed since the fall town meeting is that we fixed up the addenda that we had to add to it at the last meeting. I don't think it's changed. We really haven't taken any serious looks at it since. So I think it's something that's being pushed through, and I don't think it should be pushed through so quickly with as little review that it's had. That's all.
All right, thank you. Eric and I are community members, so I don't think we have anything to add from respective boards, right? Okay. All right, and I know we have a lot of folks on the call, and it is time for public comment. I'm going to skip over number 5 for right now. If you want to speak, please raise your hand, and we'll let you speak. Okay, I see a lot of people listening, but nobody raising their hand. So I'll give it one more call. If any of you folks, any of the citizens are on that want to speak to the Open Space Committee, please raise your hand. Oh, Ashley, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Lovely, thank you. My name is Ashley Braun. Obviously, you can see it on the screen.
Yep.
I live at 607 Reservoir Road, so I am a resident of Lake Shirley. I did go to the select board meeting this past Tuesday when they discussed the option that Shady Point had presented. And I just want to say that being on the lake and being a part of the association, one of our huge concerns is the quality of the water itself. And I'm sure you've heard this before, so I'm just going to echo it again. Having any sort of access to the lake, I am not against public access to the lake. What concerns me the most is checking boats for any invasive weeds.
Mhm.
And making sure we're monitoring for that. So like an unmonitored in and out places around the lake, like where there's no trash being taken care of, things of that nature. I mean, I think Shady Point offering up a spot for folks to come in, launch a kayak, go fishing, kayak around, like that's wonderful. You know, there's going to be a spot for them to use the bathroom, to rinse their kayaks off. And I think that's important. And these are the factors, like you can't just take a piece of land and give folks access to it and not make sure that the amenities are there and that there's funding to pay for it and monitor it. And, you know, because as a member of this lake, the association is voluntary, as you know. Not every resident on this lake pays for the treatment of the lake, the care of the lake, and the town owns the lake. So you talk about like fundraising for different parcels of land for open space. Like we raise all that money ourselves through different fundraisers, the golf tournament, the boat parade raffle, like all of it to just care for the town's lake, you know? So it's, if we're going to have open space at, you know, at these parcels, I think it needs a more well thought out plan to make sure that there's funding in place, that there's staffing in place, that there's rules and all sorts of structure to it. So I think what Shady Point's offering, especially with this Marshall Park expansion going on, for a 10-year chunk is such a good opportunity to give the members of this town the ability to use the lake, which is what everybody's, goal, I think, is in the short term. So that's all I really have to say. And I apologize for rambling a little bit. It's been a long day for all of us, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, that's quite all right. And I think, Ms. Braun, I think we agree with you that the offer from Shady Point to the residents of the town is awesome. And to Anna's point, we're, hoping to keep this moving forward so that we actually put pen to paper and get the agreement signed between Shady Point and the town.
And I think that's great. I appreciate your advocacy for that and getting that agreement signed. And I think as long as you are, sharing that with the townspeople, that this is what we want to do so we can get the access. I have a lot of people like myself rallying behind you and writing letters or emails, rather, who writes a letter anymore, to the select board to say, like, please push this through. So
we agree. I mean, you have to remember where we started. There was no offer, there was no access. And that's why this committee started looking at the parcels around the lake. And if that was the impetus to getting Shady Point, who's a great neighbor, to come out and make this offer to the town, well, I think that's a success.
yes, thank you.
Okay. I see iPad 9. If you can unmute yourself and identify yourself and your address, please. You have your hand up.
There, can you hear me?
I can.
Sorry about that. My name is Gary Spent, and my wife is here also, Maureen Spent. We live at 7 Ruth Street, which is right across from one of the parcels that was being considered there.
Right.
There's been a lot said with a lot of things, but I just want to offer my second to what Ashley just said. I couldn't have said it any better. And I just need to let her know, and that they have you and she has our total support for that. And Shady Point, we've known them for quite a while, and that's a wonderful proposal that they have made. So thank you for your help with all that.
What is the status of this?
Yeah.
And we were just curious what the status of that is and what the timeline for that decision will be.
Well, that's what Anna was speaking to before. Anna, do you want to give a quick summary of what you mentioned?
We came in a little bit late to the meeting. We're in
Yeah, that's
California
okay.
right now,
That's okay.
so-
We'll go over it again.
Okay.
Mike, why don't you do a summary? I'm not really good with summaries. You did so well.
So my summary from what we heard is that the offer's on the table, that the select board obviously know about it. They knew about it at the site visit. They knew about it at their subsequent public meeting. That the offer is for a 10-year period, and that the town is considering that, but we have not seen any action taken yet by the select board. So Parks will try to push it a little bit and see if we can't get this thing past the goal line and get the agreement between the town and Shady Point put together. And the agreement, I think, is great because it allows public access to Lunenburg residents, and it's easy. You show your driver's license or some other form of ID coming in to prove that you're a Lunenburg resident, and you can put a canoe or kayak in and go out and have some good recreation from some fishing opportunity. And they've got the safety protocols for the cleanup protocols for the boats coming in and out, and there are restrooms there. It's policed, so it meets a lot of the criteria that we heard a lot of the residents talk about as we considered the other parcels along the lake.
So a quick question, would it be only non-motorized boats like kayaks and canoes versus jet skis?
Yeah, that's my understanding of the way that the agreement is structured right now. It's for non-motorized access canoes and kayaks.
That is excellent news. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your comments.
Okay.
Michael, if I can just add here.
Yes,
So the story is that Parks tried to get care and control, and Select Board said no. And then this offer came up from Shady Point, and so now it's no longer a Parks issue. It's no longer an open space issue. Right now, Select Board has already said no to the ask, and so they've got a new opportunity to take a contract with Shady Point. So it's all on the Select Board. So if you want success or you want changes, then that needs to be addressed at the Select Board.
yeah, and I would, and I'll second that, Matthew. And I know that Anna said that, you know, Parks is interested in helping push this forward, but I'd like everybody else that's on this call to, you know, give the town manager a call, send an email to the select board, get this thing moving so that we put the agreement together. Because the season's coming up on us. It was 60 whatever degrees today. So before too long, we'll all want to be in our canoes and kayaks out there.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone else on the call? I don't see any other hands. Mr. Tata, you're unmuted. Do you want to speak?
I think enough has been said to clarify the situation. I will say I've been on this lake for over 40 years, and I think everybody involved in this operation who have no experience on waterfront property, as I understand it from looking at your addresses, you don't know what you don't know, and I think you better let the selectmen in Shady Point move on, because they're giving you a better deal than I would ever consider. Consider that what the deal is with the town beach, and this is so much better. It's unreal. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, appreciate it. All right. I don't see any other hand. Oh, you're raising your hand literally.
Hi, sorry, I don't know how to do the hand thing.
That's okay. Can you identify yourself?
Yes, my name is Chris Kulberg. I live at 380 Sunset Lane on Lake Shirley.
Yeah.
And I just want to reiterate what the Spence mentioned about motorized access. Along with the weeds, like Ashley mentioned, anybody who's been on this lake on a Sunday afternoon in the summer knows that there are far too many motorized boats on this lake already. And I just think that if we allow these other areas to become developed, and if they're unchecked, it's going to be very detrimental, not only to the residents, but to the lake itself. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Well, again, I'd encourage you to, you know, tap the shoulder of your select board and tell them to get this agreement put together with Shady Point for kayaks and canoes, non-motorized watercraft.
I'm sorry, if I could just ask that last speaker, could you restate your name and address for the record, please?
Chris Kulberg, 380 Sunset Lane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Colbert. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, I think we'll move on. So really, we just have a couple of last items. I don't have any other business that came up before, you know, since we put the agenda out. So let's put that on the table. Our next meeting of this committee is April the 10th and then May the 8th are the next 2 meetings. But we are talking about meeting with the planning board. And Matthew, could you repeat that date for me, please?
That was the 25th.
25th of March. So we're talking about maybe having a joint meeting with planning on the 25th of March. And we are an ad hoc committee of the planning board, so it's getting everybody back together again. All right. Anything else?
One thing I was gonna ask Mike is, for now that we finished the project of lake access, we got to a conclusion. Do you have, other things that we would be working on it, or any thoughts? Where you'd be guiding us?
Our next project?
Yeah, our next project, if you will, yeah.
No, I don't have our next project yet. I mean, to me, the next project is to get together with planning and to put together a protocol for all of us, so that, because we've had a couple of these slip by us, put
Yeah.
together a protocol so that we can, in a timely fashion, make recommendations with regard to right of first refusal for parcels coming out of Chapter 61. That's the next thing that I have. Do you
Yeah,
have something in mind?
I have two things. One is something I was talking about earlier, along with that protocol, to see if there is a way to develop a way that we can act on some of, we can add a financial piece to the protocol, where if there is a parcel we want to act on, how to exercise that right, preemptively of a town meeting. And, I don't know what that would be like, but I'm sure we're not the only town in the Commonwealth that runs into this issue. So perhaps there's been other towns that have found other ways to address, needing to, would like to buy a parcel, don't have the time for a town meeting. So along with that, strategizing that and creating a protocol, perhaps adding the financial piece to that protocol be important. The other thing is, I know we sort of have a newish open space document, but this is something that I have found that our open space document is actually something we've been using a lot for all the grants we've applied. And there's one that I think we should start talking about, maybe in a high level, or take one thing at a time. The town is changing a lot, from the past 5 years, that when I think they started working on this was in 2017 or 18. And we need to kind of come to terms with that new reality, where just about it seems like any piece of land in Lunenburg is going to end up being developed into a house. And we need to talk about what does open space and recreation and access to, the outside looks like for a more dense town. And in particular, when I look at the criteria for purchasing a piece of land, it really looks like, there won't be in the future very many 50 acres or more parcels available to purchase. And that's really telling us that as we get more densely populated, we're going to have fewer and fewer, less and less open space per capita. And we need to kind of come to terms with reality that this is not going to be the rural community with a lot of open space is not something that's not necessarily in our future if the town keeps being developed the way it is, and that's something that's out of control. So I think we need to have those conversations. What is open space, and how do we guide the town through that?
Do you recall, Brandon would know this off the top of his head, do you recall what the refresh cycle is on the open space and recreation plan?
Yeah, it's 2026. So there says it's from 20 to 26. So by 26, theoretically, you would have a document ready.
Okay. So it's not too soon, to start talking about how we're going to do that in the next 2 years.
Exactly. I think
Okay.
if we take, a good year talking about it, and then maybe 6-8 months putting the document together.
Yeah.
It seems to be the right, and this is a huge document. It's 200 pages.
And a lot of GIS work.
And a lot of GIS work. So there's a lot that needs to be done. So I think, those two things for us, I think it's a good direction.
Okay.
But you're
thank
the
you for that.
chair, you decide that.
No, thank you for that. That's a good reminder. Thank you. Appreciate it. Eric, you captured that, right?
I did.
Okay, good. We'll ship that off to Brandon. Okay, anything else for the good of the committee? Or the town? I think we're set. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
moved.
adjourn, there we go.
I'll second.
There we go.
All right. We got 1, 2. Excellent. All right, I'll do a quick roll call. Matthew Allison,
Aye.
Anna Lockwood,
Aye.
Eric Hines,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye as well. So thank you very much. Thanks for all the thoughtful discussion and for the folks that joined us to weigh in on open space in Lunenburg. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good
Have a
night.
good evening.
Thanks, everyone.